All right. So, what does 1,000 mean biblically? Uh, Related to multiple things. All right. Like, what does it mean 1,000 years, the millennial reign of Christ as translated into Greek? Of course, that was John writing that, and he was a Jew. And there's a pretty good case to be made that he would have written that in Hebrew and been thinking from a Hebrew perspective of that time. So, we read the Bible in English and in the modern Western way of thinking, the more Greek way of thinking, and we see 1,000 and we just think, yep, I know it, it's 1,000. 1,000 just means 1,000. Really? What do you do with something like Psalm 50:10? Now, this is the ancient Jewish mind and how it operated. And here, I believe it's God saying that all the animals of the forest are mine, and I own the cattle on 1,000 hills. So, looks like I got some crazy whiskers here. Um, so, I own the cattle on 1,000 hills. So, was that literal? There was just 1,000. It wasn't 999. It wasn't 1,001. It was just, I got some animals on 1,000 hills, but that's it. Yeah, take a literature class. Like you don't even take a literature class. Just read one page on literature, and you're gonna see hyperbole. You see hyperbole in maybe not quite hyperbole, but you're gonna see it a lot in the Jewish culture as well. When Jesus says, let your yes mean yes and mean no, because you had these the religious leaders, like out there proclaiming and this I swear and making all these things, saying what they said, and then giving this litany of BS to say and this is what I mean, and this is if this isn't what I mean, this will happen, or like going on and on, like kind of like a politician or maybe a crazy pastor, right? I think the imagery's there. So, what does it mean when I say I have the cattle on 1,000 hills, or the cattle on 1,000 hills are mine? It's giving a mental picture, right? It's projecting an image, an idea of kind of like a high number, the infinite. All right, like so. Let's now go to Psalm 90, verse 4 would be for 1,000 years in your sight are like yesterday when it passes by, or as a watch in the night. So again, is it a literal 1,000, or is it an expression in the Jewish mind at the time, in their culture, to express an infinity almost, or they express the idea of well, in context would matter, right? So if God says I own the animals on 1,000 hills, is he just saying he only owns part of them, or they're all his, right? Or for 1,000 years in your sight are like yesterday when it passes by, or as a watch in the night, from Psalm 94, Psalm 90 verse 4. I think it's pretty obvious to see there that it's drawing a huge contrast between how we perceive things and how an infinite being might perceive things. Go to Ecclesiastes 6:6. Even if the other man lives 1,000 years twice, that's even more emphasis, right? And does not enjoy good things, do not all go to one place. So if this guy lives twice 1,000, or there guys living to 1,000, then, or was it creating an image in your mind? Second Peter 3 verse 8. But do not let this one fact escape you. Notice, beloved, that with the Lord, one day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years like one day. And man, this scripture have gotten some stupid humans into a lot of mess, hasn't it? By misapplying it. So that's where you have people predicting the end of the world, right? And using it as a cult fixture BS. Was it actually saying 1,000 years are a day so we can count everything out? No. The Jewish mind of the time was like an expression again, where they were saying they were giving the contrast between how we perceive things as finite beings and how an infinite being perceives things. It's not literal. It's not written in the Western, the Greek way of thinking. It's written in the Eastern way of thinking of conveying an idea. This is where this translation stuff gets me because it's frustrating to see people use this stuff out of context and then ruin people's lives with it through not necessarily any fault of their own. Yes and no, but it's easy to fool people sometimes, right? And it frustrates me when people take advantage of trust of others in that way. So, Revelation 20. And he laid hold of the dragon, the serpent of old, who was the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years, and threw him into the abyss, and sealed it over. And then I saw thrones, and they sat in them. Judgment was given to them, and I saw the souls of those who had been beheaded because of the testimony of Jesus, because of the word of God, and those who had not worshipped the beast or its image, had not received the mark. And they came to life and reigned with Christ for 1,000 years. Now this is like the millennial reign, right? But this would have been translated from I would believe from Hebrew to Greek, and now from Greek to English. And so is it talking about a literal 1,000 years? You be the judge of that. I'm not telling you either way. I'm never going to tell you what to believe. I'll give you some of my ideas or thoughts. This is weird today. My whiskers. Sorry, distract me. I don't usually look in the camera much, but for some reason it feels funny and it's catching my eye. So is it 1,000 years or not? Let's go. The rest of the dead did not come to life until the 1,000 years were completed. Then blessed are the holy ones that has a part in the first resurrection. Over these the second death has no power, but they will persist of God and of Christ, and will reign with him for 1,000 years. So is it literally, is John here just saying it's 1,000 years? Look at the references to 1,000 other places in the Jewish mind. And there's obviously going to be some places where you see like numbering of people or something, right? That you could have 1,000 people in a village, 20,000 people in a village. But what's the emphasis of this? What's the emphasis of the millennial reign? And then think of a more modern take on that. Think of the 1,000-year Reich. Was Hitler saying that his rule, his system of governing that he set up, his empire was going to only last 1,000 years? That at year 1001, it was just going to crumble and fall apart? Obviously not. He's creating an image in your mind. He's saying this is something that, well, you get what I'm saying. I don't have to go with further explaining that one. So, what does 1,000 years mean biblically to the Jewish mind of the time. What could it mean to the millennial reign? And then how are ages viewed? When you see the term system of things in like say the New World Translation, it's what Inos, kind of like eon, aeon, yeah. So you go to, surprisingly enough, like say at Matthew 24:3, um, it's kind of sneaky what they do here for the New World Translation because um, it says, "Tell us when will these things be? When will be the sign of your presence and of the conclusion of the system of things?" Now we all know that they kind of equate the conclusion of the system of things with the end of the world. But really, like, go to the Greek. And surprisingly enough, system of things is a very convoluted but not that far off translation of the Greek aeon. Aeon. It would be a measure of time of things being a certain way. So at the time of Jesus, they were, let's say, in the age of the old covenant. Post Jesus, or post resurrection, they were in the age of the new covenant. You know, in Rome, they had a time of the age of Caesar, or it was the age of the dinosaurs. Like, it's just talking about an appointed time for things being away, right? A system of things. Okay, that's why I'm saying it that way. You can get there in a convoluted English way, but it doesn't quite capture what's being said. It's not saying the end of the world. And it's talking about, you can find this concept in many other cultures and religions worldwide, of the end of an age. You look at even the Mayan calendar, end of the world conspiracy people that were like, oh, the world's going to end because it's the end of the Mayan calendar. No, they were just saying it was the end of a certain age. Like it, and it's, yeah, I think I'm going to save some of that for another time, actually, because you do get into, again, contrasting oftentimes when you're using the Greek word aeon. And it's like the present age versus the past age. It's giving you an imagery again, okay? Like, you got to remember that in the Eastern way of thinking, or the Near Eastern way of thinking, it's all about imagery. It's about conveying an idea, right? It's be kind of like abstract art in a way, wouldn't it? That it's not going to be just spelled out in a Western way of thinking, or in I forget the other term for regular art. I'm not an artist, nor am I educated in that realm. Uh, but with abstract art, it's it's different, right? It's not giving you all the pieces. It's getting you to kind of look differently. So come from a Western way of thinking, to an Eastern way of thinking. What's being conveyed by talking about the end of an age? What's being conveyed when you're talking about 1,000 years? And this is where translation is about more than words. The translation, just strictly of words themselves out of context, is not the essence of understanding. So, what is the essence of understanding? I think y'all have probably figured that out by now. It takes a little bit of work and a little bit of research, though, doesn't it? To fully try to understand some of this. And then, even then, sometimes there's some things we can't just say, this is the way it is. Kind of like, well, what's heaven? What's hell? Anyone tells you they have the answer, and they are convinced they know and have the answer, I don't know that I'd be too trusting of that person. If it was so important for us to know, I think it would have been spelled out very clearly. Anyway, all right, y'all have a good one.